Tonight, I'm going to tell you 3 true Ouija stories. Real people, real nights, real things that didn't make sense until after they happened. Story 1. The House That Breathed. I didn't believe in the supernatural. Not really. I liked scary stories, sure, but I always assumed there was a trick behind them. That's exactly the mindset I had the night my friend George invited me to meet 2 girls, Mandy and her friend Carly, to explore an abandoned house and try a Ouija session for real. He was into high-activity locations. Her words, not mine. She had a whole bag with her in the back seat. When I asked what was inside, she pulled out a board and 2 stubby candles, like she was revealing a secret. George just grinned and said, "Told you she was serious." The house sat just beyond a thin line of trees. No streetlights, no neighbors. The windows were smudged with age and the paint had bubbled off in curls. We didn't take the front door. Mandy led us around the back where a high window hung crooked. The girls went up first, and we pushed from below to help them through. Inside, it felt wrong in that silent, swallowed way only empty houses get. Every step on the warped floor groaned like it was tired of holding people. Framed portraits still hung on the walls, stern faces from another decade staring past us. The smell was old wood and damp. Mandy took charge, because of course she did. She set the board on the living room floor between us, lit 2 candles, and told us to be respectful. I almost laughed, but then she said we had to introduce ourselves and apologize for intruding. So we did. For the first few questions, nothing happened. Then the planchette nudged and spelled Hello. George glanced at me like, "Okay, which one of them is doing it?" I raised an eyebrow back. "Not me." "What's your name?" Mandy asked. Gregory. "How long have you been dead?" 30. We kept going, and it kept answering, and I kept telling myself somebody was pushing. Only whoever it was had perfect timing because the movement felt impossibly smooth. No stutter, no hesitation. Every letter landed like it had already been chosen. Then, upstairs, something slammed. The 4 of us sat perfectly still. You know that feeling when the house settles? This wasn't that. This had weight, like a box dropped flat onto the floor. Mandy said, "Gregory, was that you?" The planchette slid to yes. George muttered, "Or someone else is in here." He looked at me. I knew the look. We were about to go find out. The upstairs hallway was short and wrong, like distances didn't add up. We opened the first door on the left, a bedroom. The furniture was sunken into the floor from decades of weight and rot. The wallpaper had peeled in damp fingers. Across the room sat a closet door, not quite shut. We both heard it. A slow exhale from the other side of that door. Not the house, not a draft. A person's breath. You can tell the difference. Your skin knows before your brain does. We didn't open it. We left that room without speaking, because suddenly not knowing felt safer than finding out. When we hurried back down the stairs, the living room was darker. The candles had burned lower. The board sat where we'd left it, but the girls were gone. "Hey," George called out. Silence. We circled the first floor, checking the kitchen, the hall, even tapping the walls like there might be a trick doorway. Nothing. We didn't hear footsteps leaving. No crunch of glass. It was just us. We crawled back through the window we'd come in and sprinted to the car. George called Mandy twice, straight to voicemail. He texted her 3 times. The messages turned green and then stopped sending. We sat there for a long time in the idling car, staring at the empty driveway, waiting to see them step out from behind the house, laughing, waiting for someone to wave and say it was a prank. No one did. We finally left. On the drive back, I caught our reflections ghosting across the windows and noticed how pale we looked. And then, for a second, in the black between the trees, I thought I saw a figure slip along the shoulder of the road, keeping pace with us. George didn't say anything, so I didn't either. George never heard from Mandy again. He tried reaching out a dozen times over the next week, but her number stopped working, and her social media went dark. Eventually, it just disappeared. Maybe she blocked him. Maybe we left something behind that night that didn't want us to come back. I keep running through everything in my head. The neat letters, how the planchette felt like it was gliding on its own, the thump above us, and the breath we heard behind the closet door. I tell myself there are logical explanations. Old houses settle, candles cast weird shadows, and people ghost you all the time. But when I try to sleep, what really sticks with me is that second floor. The air felt heavy, like I was walking through deep water. Even after we left, the closet didn't feel empty. And then, after we were already downstairs, I swear I heard the stairs creak again. Like something else had just stepped onto them. The board told us its name. It told us how long it had been dead. It even said yes when we heard that sound upstairs. After that, none of the questions mattered. The house had already answered. I didn't believe in the supernatural before that night. I don't really know what I believe now. I just know this. Sometimes, the dark breathes back. Story 2. The girl at the door. My experience didn't happen in some old haunted mansion or a crumbling graveyard. It took place in the early 1970s, in what seemed like the most ordinary place you could imagine. A college campus apartment in Rexburg, Idaho. There were about 15 of us that night, all religious, all sober, just hanging out after dinner. We'd played cards, laughed, and were deciding what to do next when someone pulled out a Ouija board. Back then, people didn't treat the board with the same dread many do today. It was a novelty, a dare. I didn't plan on playing. I sat close enough to watch while about 8 others placed their fingers on the planchette. At first, it was the usual nonsense. The planchette sliding without purpose, half answers and vague phrases. Maybe someone was pushing it. With so many hands, it was hard to tell. But one girl kept drawing my attention. She wasn't giggling like the others. She leaned in, focused, asking specific questions. At first they were harmless. Names, dates, the soft, "Is anyone here?" every group asks. Then she changed her tone. She asked about demons, about death, about seeing something from the other side. People shifted uncomfortably. We told her to stop. She ignored us. The room grew heavy. The chatter faded, the way it does when everyone senses something is off. I felt it sitting in my chest, that quiet pressure that says, "Don't push your luck." We finally convinced her to end it. We hadn't said goodbye yet, hadn't closed the session properly when she looked down at the letters and said, clear as anything, "I want to see you." The planchette slid to yes. Everyone froze. Then we scrambled, box shut, board shoved aside. Someone suggested charades to shake off the mood. We tried to laugh again. It didn't land. She was sitting closest to the front door. I was across from her, maybe 10 feet away, with a clear view of the entryway. That's when I heard it, a knock. It was soft, 1, maybe 2 raps. No one was expected. No one moved. After a long, tight pause, she stood. She reached for the knob. As her fingers touched the metal, the porch light flickered and went out. In the doorway, I saw it. Not a man, not a woman. Just a dark, human-shaped shadow with no face at all. A cutout in the night. She gasped and dropped. We rushed to her. The doorway was empty. Whatever had been standing there was gone. She was on the floor, her lips turning blue, her body shaking. And then she started speaking. Low, broken words none of us understood. It wasn't her voice. Later, when she came to for a moment, she looked terrified and swore she hadn't said anything at all. She couldn't even remember getting up to answer the door. But that's not what I remember most. I remember the knock. I remember the planchette sliding to yes when she asked to see it. I remember the porch light dying as that shadow filled the doorway. For me, that was enough. I never touched a Ouija board again. People can argue about causes and coincidences, but I was there. She didn't just collapse out of nowhere. Something came to the door that night. Something answered. When you think about it, that's the worst part. Not the flickering lights. Not even the planchette moving on its own. It's the way moments lock together when they shouldn't. A challenge spoken in a dark room, a polite knock, and then a life cut suddenly short. That's why, after all these years, I still call this the most chilling thing I've ever seen. Story 3. The doll in the other room. I was in my own family's basement when this happened. I'll never forget it, because I was right there when it unfolded. It was me, my brother, my dad, and a close friend sitting around a Ouija board late one night. Before we even started, we made what I now realize was a mistake. In the corner of the basement sat this porcelain doll. It wasn't small, it was almost 2 feet tall. Pale face painted with rosy cheeks, eyes made of glass that always seemed to follow you around. It had been in the family for years, and none of us liked it. Just to be safe, we carried it into the next room and laid it face down on a pile of towels. Out of sight, out of mind. At first, the board didn't give us much. The planchette drifted lazily, spelling out nonsense, refusing to form real words. We were starting to get bored when I excused myself to the bathroom, leaving the others at the table. That's when things changed. When I came back, my brother was shocked. He pointed to the board and said, "You need to see this." I leaned over and read the string of numbers the board had just spelled out. My stomach dropped. That wasn't random gibberish. That was my birthday. The air in the room shifted. None of us were laughing anymore. I asked what else it wanted to say. The planchette glided again. This time it spelled out that I would die in the Air Force. I remember chuckling nervously, shaking my head. I wasn't even thinking about joining the military. The idea felt ridiculous, but the others weren't laughing. They asked the board to prove it was real. The planchette began to move again. 3 letters this time. D-O confused. We leaned in closer. The board was spelling out a single word. Doll. We froze. None of us wanted to check, but we had to. We walked to the adjacent room, the one where we'd left that porcelain doll face down on the towels. My dad opened the door, and there it was. The doll wasn't on its stomach anymore. It was standing upright, directly in front of the doorway, waiting. Its glassy eyes locked onto ours, and for a second it felt like it had taken a step forward. That was it. Panic erupted. Chairs toppled as we bolted up the basement stairs. My brother shoved past me, and I nearly tripped in the rush. Nobody cared about the rules of closing the session. We just wanted out. Outside, my friend grabbed the board, dragged it into the yard, and set it on fire. He didn't even hesitate. He just wanted it gone. But burning it didn't erase the night. For months afterward, my friend wasn't the same. His family said he had a breakdown. He'd wake up muttering about eyes in the corners, or whispering voices in silent rooms. He never touched another Ouija board again. As for me, in the strangest twist of all, I did eventually join the Air Force. I don't know why. Maybe it was rebellion, maybe coincidence, or maybe something darker had already nudged me that way. Either way, I ended up stationed on a base in Europe, thousands of miles from that basement, but never far from the memory of that night. Whenever the family brings it up, they try to laugh. They say it's superstition. But I can see it in their eyes. They're uneasy. Because we all remember the numbers, the prediction, and the doll standing where it shouldn't have been. Sometimes I wonder if it was just coincidence. But every time I think back to that night, to the glassy eyes waiting for me, I can't shake the feeling that fate was sealed by the board.